I meant to just turn down the volume on that, not cut it out completely, but apparently technology didn't want to agree with me today. So that's okay. Happy October, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful start to your October. I know mine's like it's like finally getting cold outside. And I'm like, we're finally getting to fall. We're finally getting to October and spooky season. I'm so happy. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing wonderful. If you hear some cats meowing in the background, I apologize for that. What's up, Masa girl? She wants to say hi to everyone. That's what's happening. I hope everyone's doing great. Broadway Flea was this past weekend. I hope anyone who's in the area got to go and got to enjoy it. I got Sondheim's like big book, Look, I Made a Hat, for like $10, which is an absolute steal. It was incredible. They raised so much money for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. So that was really exciting to see, and seeing everyone get so excited for it. So yeah, if you've never been, I totally recommend it. It's like every September. But yeah, that was so much fun. And then I got to see Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman last night. And let me tell you, this production is incredible. It's like honestly the titular production of this show. I've never been a huge fan of Death of a Salesman personally, but it was a masterclass in directing, acting, design, all of it. I don't think I could ever see a production of it again without it being the one I saw. So yeah, with that, you should definitely go see it if you have the chance. Amazing performances all around. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started on the episode. Today is episode 47, and my guest is a teacher and stage manager based in Leesburg, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. She serves as the after-school program director, private acting instructor, lead summer camp instructor, and specialty class instructor at Lopez Studios Incorporated in Reston, Virginia. She also teaches theater classes to intellectually and physically disadvantaged adults as a teaching artist with ArtStream. At Lopez Studios, she teaches 13 different after-school program classes that range from ages 5 through 15, and stage manages Lopez Studios' spring main stage shows. She's a BA in Communications Theater with a minor in English and an MA in Theater and Directing from Villanova University. She would like to thank Lopez Studios Incorporated and ArtStream for the amazing teaching opportunities and for the chance to create and send home smiles every day. We went to graduate school together, and I got to work with her on my first ever production at Villanova, so I'm incredibly excited to catch up. So without further ado, this is Meg Jones. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. I'm glad. I was
getting,
like, oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. It's getting nice and cold here too.
Yeah.
I think we have a high of 62 today, so it's like
Ooh, that's
chilly.
nice. Yeah, like it actually feels like for a lot of September, I'm like, yeah, we're kind of getting into fall. And then like October 1st hit yesterday, and I was like, oh no, it's fall now. Like it's actually cold. I like this.
Like it went into fall season and it went fall,
Yep.
spooky season. Like
Literally, it's like suddenly all the leaves are orange now, and I was like, look, I'm not mad about it. I was just surprised at how quickly it happened. So we know each other from Villanova. I've had a lot of guests from whom I went to school with, so it's not surprising that I have another Villanova person with me. I had to fill my assistant stage managing credit at Villanova, and I just happened to do it on the first production of the season, Orlando by Sarah Rule, directed by the incredible James Imes, and you were our stage manager. I personally know that you stage managed to fulfill the prerequisite for your eventual directing thesis, but had you stage managed previously to that?
I have. When I went to my undergrad, that's what I went in for. And the
Oh, okay.
lady who ran the program, like the director of the theater program in my undergrad, her name was Sherry Skyro, and she famous, but I mean, you might recognize some of these shows. She stage managed Les Mis in
Oh,
London,
wow.
and she stage managed Miss Saigon in London
Those
in
are
the
some big
90s, like
shows.
the
Yeah,
Miss
like the
Saigon.
productions,
So
yeah. Oh my
she
gosh.
knew a lot, and I wasn't quite up to. I was a little lackadaisical for her taste. And so I gave it a year and I was like, you know what? I don't think stage managing is for me. I went to the prop shop, which I loved, and I did English and more props and shop stuff and sets. And so, but when I got to Villanova, I still had that bug where I really still love stage managing.
Yeah.
And so I got back into it when it was with
Well,
under James. But
and
yeah.
luckily you had to do it anyway for a requirement for your directing thesis.
Yes,
So
it
at least
did.
it was something like you enjoyed and you're like, okay, cool. I'm excited for
And
this.
like if I could pick any show, it was definitely Orlando was the best show, hands down. That
Oh,
I still my favorite personal show that we did.
yeah.
Everything about it came together like this perfect puzzle.
No, it
So
really did. Like that was I remember even just like sitting in the room for that rehearsal process and being like, everyone is just so happy to be here and collaborate.
the
It's like you
vibes were
don't
just
get it.
great through the whole
Yeah,
show. Everybody's vibing
exactly.
so well. Everybody
Exactly.
got along.
And you don't get that all the time, but when it does happen, it's so
It's like
freaking special.
magic.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, 100%. And, like, granted, that's just kind of with how it goes with working with James. So, there's that to be said of it. Did you learn anything, like, on Orlando or, like, the experience of s or sorry, did you learn anything specific on, like, Orlando when you were stage managing? Or did, like, that experience of stage managing end up coming in handy with your thesis later down the line?
I I did learn a lot from Orlando. A lot of things that you don't think about as a stage manager, like whatever vibe that you put off, whatever emotions that you are feeling, a lot of people are going to take that with you. So if you're
Yeah,
calm and you are ready and punctual and organized, then a lot of actors and a lot they're going to follow that. They're going to emulate that, which I didn't
totally.
consider that if I was, off the walls and had no idea what I was doing, I don't think it would have gone. But if I, BS'd it enough and it looked like I knew what I was doing, then that's gonna help a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah,
But
it's the feeling confident and fake it till you make it
fake
kind of
you make
situation.
it. And
Yeah.
so, but I did learn a lot. I learned some good organizational stuff. I learned how to keep time really well and knowing,
Mhm.
okay, this is gonna come after this. Like it's really good. But
Yeah,
a
like
lot
really
of
good
things
timing on, like, calling cues and things like
because
that
you
too.
I did not watching the show and then getting the cues for the show. It was like a whole different ballgame because that show had, I think, almost 300 lighting and sound
That
cues.
sounds about
It
right. We
was
had a lot of technical elements,
there was a
just lights and
lot.
sounds. Everything else was like we were moving everyone was moving things by hand, but, like, lights and sound were intense on that show.
And I had Melissa with me in the booth, Melissa
Mhm.
Sturgis, and then Gabe was in the sound booth.
Oh,
And
I
so,
forgot it
like,
was Gabe that
the
was
three
running
of
sound
us
on that
just
show.
like to not just sit there and tuk, 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 was
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Getting back to the beginning of things, and I'm curious because I don't think we've ever talked about this. How did you first get started in theater?
oh my goodness. Well, my dad, so it starts out not so great, but it does get better, I promise. So, my dad went to Afghanistan
Mm,
for right after 9/11. A month later, he was in Afghanistan for 2 years.
wow.
And so when he came back, he got a new job and we moved from Alabama to Georgia to Louisiana to a different part of like we moved all the time. So by the time I was 8, I think I had moved like 7 or 8 different houses, 3 different
Wow.
states. And so I didn't make many friends because like we were just gonna move again.
Yeah.
And my dad got the craziest opportunities to move to Japan and Ireland and he decided, nope, we're staying in Shreveport, Louisiana. So that's what we did. But I still like by the time I was 8, I didn't have a lot of friends. I just assumed we were going to move again.
Mhm.
So my aunt, may she rest in peace, she was a wonderful person. She knew of a theater company called Peter Pan Players. And Peter
Mhm.
Pan Players did theater classes during the week, and they did a couple of like always Disney themed shows, but they did shows and her name was Miss Is, and she was one of the best directors I've ever had, even as a kid. She's so memorable. She was 4 feet tall, had bright red hair, and always sat in the very back seat. And that's how she taught you projection. Because if her 90-year-old ears couldn't hear you, nobody was going to.
Yeah, no, I had similar things of like, make sure your grandma in the back row can hear you. Like
She was
that's
literally your great grandma in the background. Like, if she can hear you, then you're good.
yeah.
But so I did that. I just got started with them, and I did Pinocchio, or my first role ever. I was a donkey child in Pinocchio, and we ears and everything. And
Nice.
then I was in Snow White, and right after Snow White, I mean, she was like 90 years old. She passed away, and so
Mm.
it went person after person, but I was hooked at that point. Like I loved it. And I did everything from Tom Sawyer the musical, which is an underrated show. I did Tom Sawyer the musical. They did Little Mermaid and all kinds of shows, and I just loved it. And I eventually moved to a theater company called Academy of Children's Theater, and they did like the Junior Theater Festival with the competition in Atlanta, and they did a little bit more, not adult shows, but a little
Yeah.
bit more mature. They did In the Heights and Pollyanna and Fame and stuff like this. So they were a little bit more. And Hairspray was such a
Yeah.
good show to be in. Oh my
Oh,
god.
absolutely. I can imagine. Yeah, no, I love that you got into it at a young age simply because it's like it's such a social thing. Like it's a way to make friends, to make those connections. And
Absolutely.
I think we'll be able to draw several connections later on when we start talking about like teaching and stuff. But I also want to ask, because you're on Overtures, was there a moment or overture or light bulb moment that made you realize like, oh, I've been doing theater all this time, but like I want to do this like for real, like for my career?
The light bulb moment was when I got to high school and I had to kind of make a decision, like what am I going to do when I get to college? What's going to be the path? And I knew Taekwondo and I knew theater, and
Yeah.
I dislocated my knee, so it wasn't going to be Taekwondo. So I went into theater. I knew it well. And I always loved writing, and that was another thing that I loved writing. I loved writing books. I liked writing fan fictions because I was in high school, and I loved writing plays and poems. Like I loved that aspect, and so I liked how theater kind of combined both the things I liked of writing material and then seeing it done, which is how I
Yeah.
eventually found directing. And yeah, I was in high school trying to find what I was going to continue to do and going in for stage management and then eventually figuring out
You're like, oh
at
wait,
least
maybe not fully stage management,
not
but
fully stage manage, but I was in the right field. I was
yeah,
getting there until I
you were
got to
getting there. You
directing.
were
I
getting
was getting
close.
there.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of directing, the last time I saw you was honestly right before the pandemic. It's obviously a very frustrating time for all of us, especially within the Villanova Theater Department, given the fact that it was like really during like the beginning of thesis season too. And you had a directing thesis coming up, no less. Can you tell me a little bit about how, so like pre-pandemic, how did you go about choosing your play, and what were you like originally planning for it?
I I was given a couple like requirements, and one thing was the show had to either be one act of a full show or like a one act show. And I wasn't a big fan of only doing one act of a whole play because you're only
Right.
telling half the story. So I wanted a full complete story. So I know I needed a one act, and I looked and I looked through books, I looked, and nothing came close to the very first thing I read, which was Dumbwaiter, which is what I ended up choosing. I loved Dumbwaiter. I liked the story arc. I like that the central plot of Dumbwaiter is there's two henchmen, and they're going to get this order. They're going to get like the next person they're going to kill off. And what you figure out and what one of them knows and the other one doesn't is that the order is for the second henchman. And it is
Gotcha.
never said in the entire play ever. Like it leads to it. So the subtlety of it I loved, because how do you tell a story that's never said? And
Yeah,
it
and
was
playing with the like, I'm sure as like a director playing with, okay, how much do we give away in the
mhm.
lines in a like contextual way, and
And
like that kind of
physically
thing.
and building the tension, but some audience may get why and some audiences don't. And
Yeah.
so, but they know something's wrong. And
Yeah.
how do you act out the movement of something is wrong?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so you're not from Pennsylvania, obviously, where we went to school. So when the pandemic hit, everyone went home, you went home, but it definitely didn't stop you from fulfilling
It
your
didn't. I
directing
still
thesis.
had to do a directing thesis, and all
How
the theater shut down.
yeah, how did you go about working on your thesis once you went home?
I got incredibly lucky. I My mother ran a arts council. So she ran the Bossier City Arts Council, which had they did art galleries and they did shows and they did classes and all kinds of stuff and for local artists. But the downstairs was 2 art galleries and then the upstairs was 100-person seat theater, like a black box theater. And so that was the cheapest theater that you could rent in all of northern Louisiana. So a lot of schools did performances there and upcoming theater companies did there. And that's where I got incredibly lucky because if my mother runs the theater, guess where my show's gonna be.
Yeah, you're like, where should I film this?
I wonder where I could do a play. And like, so we worked it out. We blocked off for the audience because I had to have, that was a requirement. I had to have some sort of audience. And so we did like, if there was 100 people, like 6 rows, every other row was blocked off and then every other seat was blocked off. So like, that's how we social distance is like person, seat, person.
I didn't realize they were still requiring an audience for you from
I had to have people to see it. I couldn't do
I forgot about that.
I couldn't do I couldn't do a reading of film later. That wouldn't be, I wouldn't direct anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's so crazy.
I had to have an, and I think I had 20 people over, but it was enough. And so, and I live recorded it.
Well, and you had to recast it too.
I did. I had to recast it because originally I had Ethan and Gabe from Villanova, and then I recasted it to a guy named Michael, and I'm blanking on his last name. I'm so sorry, Michael. But Michael is, his resume includes being Superman at Comic-Cons, and he gets hired as Superman to different Comic-Cons. And when I say when this man puts on the suit, he looks like Superman.
That's cool.
He was one of my henchmen. And then Matt Latz, a man named Matt Matz, was my other henchman. And Matt Latz was a drag queen at a brunch bar. And
incredible.
His drag name was June Cleavage. And so I've got June Cleavage and Superman as my henchmen in this show. And they were troopers. They did so well.
Yeah.
And we did build the whole set together. I got, and my neighbor owned a couple of Mattress Pluses and furniture stores, and he let us borrow, because there's 2 beds on this show. He let us borrow the furniture that was in the show. Like, it was just like the whole community came together to help each other. It was so wonderful.
That's so special. And especially when like everything was so rough right in the beginning there, getting to throw like we were talking about this before going live, but being able to throw your full attention into something like this during some of the most like difficult parts for many people of the pandemic. I'm sure that was such a moment that's filled with gratitude for you.
And both of them were such like local celebrity kind of, so it was like, especially like Matt Latz, everybody knew who he was in the community. And so I was so nervous to call him and be like, hey, can you do like my little thesis show at this like little theater? And he was so happy to do it because he's like, I'm not doing anything right now. Everything's closed.
You're like, he was like, an opportunity to actually do something.
Please.
I will do it.
Let me be busy.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so obviously you successfully defended your thesis, you graduated, which I'm sure was such a relief given the circumstances.
I did. It was, the thesis went so well. I know Joyce and Ed and all of them were on my thesis. And the first thing they asked was, so how did you do the live recording? Because we're thinking about doing that for future shows. And like half of my thesis was explaining the technical elements of how I went about.
Yeah, because after that, we started that next fall and we were like, well, how are we going to do this? So that's
You're welcome.
Completely understandable. Well, and then we went to mostly Zoom at that point, but like, yeah, absolutely. And then I'm curious, I know you so much as a director and you don't really list it in your bio. Directing is obviously still something you must be interested in, correct? Or if you just found that new love in teaching and stage managing.
I get that director bug with the teaching because all of my classes that I teach, all 13 of them, do a performance at the end in December. And so I direct Moana songs and Annie songs and scenes, and we do some classes that we like create our own story and then we direct it together. And so like I still get a little bit of like, because they do a
Yeah.
performance and all my acting students do a performance in June, and so
It scratches that itch.
it scratches that itch for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And then you mentioned in your bio, as we were saying, that you teach theater classes to mentally and physically disabled adults with Art Stream. Is this something that's outside of your job with Lopez Studios, or is this in tandem with them?
It is outside of my job with Lopez Studios.
That's really
So
cool.
it started with a friend called me who worked at Lopez. So he says, I've got this friend who they're in desperate need of a teacher for a couple of their classes in Virginia because they're based in Maryland.
Okay.
And so I got the phone call from her at ArtStream, and we just chit chatted, and she's like, "We need a teacher for these couple of classes." I was like, "I can do anything before 2 o'clock, because after that I have after school program, and like I couldn't do
Yeah.
anything back there." So I ended up teaching 3 class. I still teach 3 classes for always adults, and they are intellectually and physically disadvantaged, and they are the sweetest, nicest, funniest.
Yeah.
They are so wonderful. I've had I've got some stories too for there, but they are wonderful.
Yeah.
And
No, and I'm curious, had you worked with this demographic before? Because I know, speaking from a small amount of experience, it's obviously not just the same as just teaching kids or just teaching adults. And thinking of it in either of those ways is a huge disservice to both those students and the teachers.
it was definitely a curveball at the beginning. I have 2 cousins, one who cerebral palsy and the other one who is severely autistic. And so
Mhm.
that is, and another uncle on this side who's also intellectually and physically disadvantaged. So I had grown up with it, but I never
Yeah.
taught, and those are very different things, is
100%.
being comfortable and knowing and versus trying to teach
Mhm.
that kind of demographic. And so I went in my first day, and I had like a long list of all these games that had worked with kids, and not a single one of them stuck. None of them were. So I had to tailor every game, which was fine. Like I just
Yeah.
didn't think about what they can and cannot do,
Mhm.
what would work and what didn't work. And so it's every day, every week is okay. I've got these games I think they would like. How do I tailor that? And so one of the most popular with both groups at Lopez Studios with the kids and this one is called Suspicious. And so you are in a circle. Somebody has a toy. So I've got this toy dog that
Mhm.
it looks like Toto from Wizard of Oz, and you're in a circle. Everybody's got their hands behind their back, and somebody is hiding this toy behind their back. And so when we were with the kids, one person's in the middle and they have to guess who's hiding the toy. But the toy can
Mhm.
get passed around when they're not looking to other
Right.
people. It can get thrown across the room. Like it can go anywhere. And so they liked that. When I brought it over here, like to Art Stream, it just didn't work in that way.
Yeah.
So instead we all sat in the chairs, and one person's got it behind their back, and then it was the group to decide who's hiding it. So
Oh, yeah.
it's
Making
just
it like
stuff
a
like that.
collaborative piece in that way.
Collaborative. And so everybody closes their eyes. I hand it to somebody. We all open our eyes, and we have to guess who's hiding it. And so
That's
because like
cool.
one person in the middle just didn't work out as well. So, but that
Yeah.
is, they want to play that game every week.
There's always those games that's like stick with groups that they're like, "Can we play this?" And you're like, "I have some other ones that we want to play first, but I eventually
I
we can try and get to it." Yeah.
that's the game that like we always end on classes, because that is the game
The
that
game.
they look forward to.
Do you teach them scenes, or do you work on scenes with them as well, or is it mostly theater game based?
It's mostly theater game based. The closest that I do is we do Mad Libs. So we fill in the Mad Libs, and then
Mhm.
they act them out,
Oh,
and
that's
that's
fun.
worked really well. But the reading level can vary person to person, and
Of course.
the 3 classes are wildly different between them. So
Mhm.
having like one set lesson plan just didn't work for all 3.
Yeah.
because I've got one class that is small, but they're very verbal. And then
Mm-hmm.
I've got another class that's huge, and half of them are verbal and half of them are nonverbal. And then
Mm.
my third class that I teach on Friday are small, and most of them are nonverbal.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah. And so
this
then there's a lot of tailoring that has to be done to make sure it's accessible.
Exactly. And so the
Yeah.
first two classes are big open rooms, and the third one has tables. So I do a lot more like art projects and a lot more.
Mm.
We did color by numbers with the fall themed. And so all
Nice.
of them got their own distinct like sheet of paper, and they all color and they loved it. And so
I
I
love
do a
that.
lot more theater games with the bigger groups and the verbal groups. And then but that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily work for when they're nonverbal. How do they can't tell you how they're feeling, they can't tell you when they're ready to move on to a new game, they can't tell
Right.
you. So
Well, I think that's really awesome what you're doing, and I think that those what you're describing of making sure it's like, okay, how can I meet the needs of like all of
exactly.
these different classes is so important, like both at like the child level and the adult level too. And so you're currently working at Lopez Studios in Reston, Virginia. How did this position come about, and how long have you been working there?
This is my third year there. I I got a lot of luck. I don't know what I did in my life to get just luck. Just like hand it to me. I'm so sorry because I know it's like I wish it was like some big trial that it took, but I
Right.
applied on Indeed and I did 2 rounds of interviews. And my second round of interview, I got we're like, we're going to hand you a private student. You're going to do
Mhm.
one class with them. They're going to
Mm.
hand you this monologue. They're looking to audition with this monologue. So I wrote a little like lesson plan and got the student, and she was super nice. And so I was on a big Zoom call, and so I had like the student, myself, Mr. Lopez, and like a couple of other people that worked there, but like their cameras was off, so they're just like silently like
Watching.
judging
Yeah.
you, watching, waiting for you. And so what I found out when I got hired was it was actually Mr. Lopez, his wife, who's a school principal, the student was his daughter, and me. So it
Oh
was
my
like
gosh.
a whole family affair.
That's so funny.
And that's who interviewed me was like the entire family. But like all of them were qualified
Yeah.
to because she was a school principal, and she asked me quite a few questions, and then he asked me some questions, and then I got the job.
That was that, and then you're
That
like
was
they're
it.
like, "Okay, you're on board."
Yeah, I can't
We're
say it's always been perfect. I haven't always been perfect. It's but like
yeah.
I had no teaching experience going into this
Yeah,
job.
yeah, I was wondering about that, and then also, have you always been down for working with kids, or did that even come as a surprise for you?
That was such a surprise for me because I love children. I do.
Yeah.
I love kids, and but I come from a huge family of teachers. My dad's a
Mhm.
teacher. My dad's a high school teacher. My grandmother was a robotics teacher. My aunt, who recommended me to theater in the first place, was a teacher. Um, my I've got aunts and uncles and like I grew up with a lot of teachers.
Yeah.
And that is not what I wanted to do when I got older. That I wanted to be a
You're like,
writer. I
I
wanted to
you
direct. I wanted to. It's
you're
just
like, "I saw
not.
all of that," and you were like,
That's not
none of that."
interesting at all. I don't want 30 kids in a classroom trying to
Fast
teach them
forward.
Shakespeare. That's just not what I wanted to do. And so, but when I actually got to do it, I realized how much I loved it. It was, of
Yeah.
course, all my family members go to be teachers because, like, as soon as you try it, it's like the best thing in the world. Because I get like the first kid that gives you a hug, like you melt and you're ready, like
Yeah.
your whole day just got better.
Yeah,
It is.
100%. When, like, the kids, like, trust you like that and are like, "Ha like, I'm gonna miss you," or "I'll see you tomorrow," and, like, things like that, you're just like,
I've
"Oh,
got a
that gets you in the
wall
heart."
I've got a wall of artwork of
Oh.
all the artwork that kids have given me, necklaces they've made me,
Oh.
like craft things. I've got a boat. A whole classroom got together and it was a Moana themed, and they built their own boat,
Oh.
signed the boat, and then presented it to me the last day. And I like
I would
just
start
stopped
bawling.
myself crying
Yeah.
because they collectively thought make a boat, sign the
Yeah.
boat, hand it to Miss Jones. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you're
You're like,
the best class.
You're like, how do I not keep doing this?"
I
Like, oh
know.
my
It's so
gosh.
as soon as I tried it, I loved it. Like, of course, this is why all of my family goes and be teachers because
Well, and then it's funny
it's a
because
calling.
I'm sure like when you saw it on Indeed, I guess I like in my own brain, I'm sure it was like that moment if you're like, well, I need to start somewhere, like da 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 da, applies for it, and then it's like fast forward to like what 3
Really
years
didn't think I'd
later.
get it, and then 3
Yeah,
years
and then
later,
they're
here
like,
I am.
wow, that was weird that like all ended up the way it did, but
It did, 'cause,
so
like,
special.
before I was working at Lopez, I was working at an escape room. I was managing at an escape
What
room
a
in
good
Pittsburgh,
survival job.
Virginia.
I feel
You
like
know
that's like
what?
really story based too.
It was such a good it's such a weird, like, you hit your theater bug a little bit because you have to do the acting part and you reset the props, and I got to help build some of the rooms and build some of
Oh,
the
that's
props, which is
fun.
so much fun. And I've got this really funny video, I will never delete it in my whole life. There was a haunted campsite themed room, so you went in and there's, like, this haunted cabin, and there was one of those fish that, like, talk to you, so
Oh my
every
gosh.
time the escape room person, like, talked to you, the
That would
fish would
move.
move and talk to you. It was so funny. But one time it broke and all it would go is and so,
Oh
like, I have this
no.
video on Halloween that night, and the fish turned right to us as we were resetting, went,
That's terrifying.
I'm out. I'm gone.
You're
Goodbye.
like,
Goodbye.
"Bye.
Because there was
Goodbye."
nobody in the room to make the fish go off.
Oh my
And for some
god.
reason, it just started
And you're
yelling
like
at us in like these haunted, scary noises. I'm like,
you're like,
goodbye.
"Mm-mm."
Nope.
I well, I am also like I haven't like this sounds silly. I've never actually done in an escape room, so I'm curious. Did you also have to like feed them hints if they were like not getting it? Because I
Yeah.
feel like that's also kind of along the
That
same
was
lines of like
such
trying to
a
get a scene back on track if no one remembers the lines, like
that was such a
that
hard
improvisation.
like fine line between giving them a hint but not making them feel stupid.
Yeah.
And I had never done an escape room before I took that job, and then I ended up managing at the
Oh my
place and
gosh.
teaching rooms, and so I had to learn, like, all the tricks of the trade, and every week there we added a new rule because we had people who climbed in the ceiling, we had people who broke furniture, we had
Yeah.
people who, "Oh, this thing might be in the hourglass, let me take it and smash it." "Do not break the hourglass!
Oh
It
my
is
god.
in the hourglass, you don't need to take it out of the hourglass or ceiling. We had a person climbed in the ceiling.
Oh my god. And
Like,
you're
who
like,
thinks,
please get
"Mm,
down from the ceiling.
please,
Thank
please,
you."
please off the furniture. Please don't jump on the bed. Please don't like."
People just, like, sometimes think a little too far out of the box, and you're like,
If you're an
no, it's
overthinker, an escape room's not for you.
no." Yeah, that would be me, honestly. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's
Or
absolutely crazy.
my favorite all-time story from there is we did a Halloween room, and there's a drawer that you open that you have to find this Ouija board, and the Ouija board moved, like, when you opened it, and
Oh,
it moved on its own, but there was the drawer below it, and when you opened it, there was a doll that went off, and it was, like, wired into the drawer, so when you open it up, it like, "Hello, ba 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 ba," and then you
yeah.
just close the door real quick, so because nobody wants to deal with that.
No.
Until I got to one lady and she opened the drawer, saw the dog, grabbed it, ripped the wires out, and hurled it against the wall. And
Oh my
like it took
god.
everything I had not to like crack laughing because she ripped a doll out of the
Was
wires.
it just out of fear or
Yeah,
like
because this doll
oh my
freaked her out
god.
so bad, grabbed it and threw it, like hurled it against the wall, smashed it to pieces.
That's insane. The amount
Now,
of damages you guys would have to, like, redo, like, I
like, could
can't
you
even
imagine
imagine.
working in the props department,
Eh,
wiring a doll into a drawer to talk on command when you open the drawer and someone
only for
breaks it
someone to just,
immediately?
like yeah, yeah.
Break it
I would be
immediately.
livid. I would actually be livid. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Well, getting back to, like, teaching with the studios, I know there's no good, like, segue to get back because I really wanted to talk about that once you mentioned it. But, so from the sounds of it, all of your roles there keep you incredibly busy, and from the sounds of it, you absolutely love it. Are there some aspects that you prefer more than others? Because 'Cause you're doing a little bit of everything while you're there.
I There are some challenges that came with it. One of the saddest things is when, and I always know every single class that's coming, if you do like a themed class, so if you're doing like I do an Annie themed class during the week and I have two Frozen classes on Saturdays, and eventually it comes up, you have to have auditions because you'll need an Elsa, you'll need an
Yeah.
Olaf, you'll need an Anna. you'll need a Kristoff. And so you tell the whole class, here's your monologue, you're going to take it home. Here's the list of characters that I need. But remember, I can only have one of each.
Yeah.
And so, as even no matter how gently you could be, there's always the kid who's upset because they didn't get to be Elsa.
Yeah.
And the summer camps were the saddest because I think I had a kid cry every day in camp and multiple kids cry because they didn't get the role that they wanted, even
Yeah.
though when we did a one song for Little Mermaid, it's Kiss the Girl, so she doesn't even get to talk. But every girl wanted to be Ariel, and only one got it, and everybody else is so upset. But I'm like,
And you're
how
like,
do
but
I
here's the thing,
explain to you
Ariel does
this is not a
nothing.
big deal?
Yeah, Ariel does nothing in that scene.
She
You
does
all get to
nothing.
actually sing.
All she did was like we did a little bit of sign language,
Oh
like
my
that's
gosh.
it. And then like she doesn't talk. And
And
I
that's so
know this means the
hard.
world to you, but like that's
Yeah.
so hard because you don't want to negate how their feelings. You don't want to tell them, you know, I know you are you, I know this means the world to you, but girl, like
Yeah.
this once a week camp is just
It's not
not
that deep,
it's
like
not that deep.
yeah. Yeah, well, and it's hard too, because like, it's their first introduction to, like,
Right.
rejection in theater, and that's so tough when they're so, so young.
And so that week of like all my classes have their auditions, and then the next week we announce, and we don't even say leads, we say just bit roles or a couple of lines. And some of the kids are fine with, okay, as long as they're doing something, they're fine. And then I
Mhm.
start getting the emails from the parents.
Oh, boy.
Of why is my kid not Elsa? What were your requirements? What can we do? Like, and it's at least one or two every class of
That's rough. Because it's like, what do
bit
you tell the parents without, like,
like
wanting to just shred that email
right,
to,
because you
like,
can't be mean
pieces?
and right.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we talked about projection and we need some kids with better reading levels, but you can't
And
say
also
that either.
no, and then it's also like, so like, I'm sorry, there were 30 little kids who wanted to all
Kids
play
who all
Elsa. I
wanted
can
to be
only pick
Elsa.
one. Like, what do you say to that, you know? Like,
And
I
so,
that
yeah,
must be
sometimes
so
it's the
hard.
kids that are upset, and sometimes it's the parents that are more upset because their kid's not the lead in that 1 hour
Right.
camp that we do.
And I'm sure that's a whole learning curve too, where it's like, haven't necessarily people don't get taught to, like, talk to the parents about their child's
Right.
performance, literally.
And I've never
So
had like a full blown Karen in a while, which is good
well,
because
that's
like
good.
I've had some that are just like that are a lot, but I've had
Yeah,
some. Most of them are pretty good. So like the
good.
last one that I did, she was wondering why her kid didn't get any lines, and I was like, well, when we do the audition, we talk if you don't want to audition, you don't have to, and she chose not to. She didn't want to audition,
Yeah,
so she didn't get any lines.
yeah,
But in a very very nicely worded email, you got to
yeah.
explain that they didn't want any.
Yeah, and that's okay too, like,
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
every kid wants to be the lead, and that's all right.
Exactly.
Well, and you work with such a huge age range, like 5 through
Mhm.
15. How do you like that? Because I know some people really prefer, like, one age over another, but, like, to work with so many is, like, there's so many different variables.
And even in classes, because like I've got certain classes that age range 5 to 9, and if you like in your brain, you don't think there might be a big difference between a 6-year-old, 9-year-old. There is a huge difference between a
Oh,
6-year-old and a 9-year-old.
absolutely.
And 9-year-olds see that there's a huge difference between themselves and the 6-year-olds in class. And so balancing to keep all of their interests, because like 5 and 6-year-olds are very easily entertained, but
Yeah.
they're worn out a lot faster.
Mhm.
And 9-year-olds, you have to constantly keep them doing something because they'll figure out really quickly that they're bored or they don't want to do this or this is too kiddie for them. So like
Yeah.
getting games and activities and shows that everybody from 5 to 9 can love at the same time, and it's not too heavy reading because you're not all there at the reading level, or it's not too difficult because then the 5-year-old's getting lost and the 9-year-old's there. Like it's so
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah, that
find the
balance
balance.
is, like,
And
really tough.
but when I get to the 10 to 15, they see less of a difference
Yeah.
between them, which is kind of interesting because I've got an intro to musical theater and I've got 10 to 15-year-olds, and I do have a 10 and I do have a 15-year-old, but they are more accepting of each other and their ages than the
Yeah.
9-year-old versus that 5-year-old.
Yeah,
So
no, I can definitely see that, and I can think of times like that, like, even when you're in elementary school, you feel like a year is such a big range, but then once you get into middle school and high school, that disappears. So
yeah.
that makes sense, that makes sense. And I know you teach about, like, 13 different after school classes. What are some of the classes that you teach?
I do. I made a list. I do. Like I said before we got on here, I didn't know what to, so I like wrote everything I've done. But
You were like,
I
"Just in case."
just in case, because like my brain is so foggy sometimes that I'm like, if I don't write it down, I will not remember. My
Yeah.
planner is very like detailed. And so I do acting classes, I do a Disney themed class. And so the Disney themed class, I let them pick what two songs they wanted to do from shows, gave them a list, and they picked Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast. And so we're doing
Oh.
songs from those two shows. I've got a couple of breaking out of your show classes just for the shy kids where we take it
Oh.
very nice and slow, very nice and easy. We just did acting scenes last week for that class. And so we talked about like how to tell a story, a protagonist, an antagonist, a couple of the other characters you might see, like a mentor, the love interest, the fool character. And so we compare that Disney's always sells. They always know if I talk about the fool character, they know Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah.
Or the horse and Tangle. Like they know the funny characters.
Yeah.
And
That's so cool
then
that you have, like, a class that's specifically for, like, some of the shyer kids to, like, help them. Because I 'cause I've
absolutely.
never heard of that in, like, an arts, like, after school setting, and I think that that's actually really important.
It is, because not every kid is the extrovert, right?
Yeah.
And so you can be in theater and you can like theater, but still and like the concept, but maybe not necessarily want to be in Frozen with 20 other kids screaming
Yeah.
their heads off, "Let it go!" Like,
Yeah.
then maybe that's not your style.
Yeah, that's not the vibe, like, yeah.
And
Um
and then
No,
I
go
do
ahead.
the Annie class, and then I do an improv theater game class on Fridays. It's the fun day, and then I
That's
do
fun.
three. I on Saturday I do the Frozen and the intro to musical theater for teenagers,
That's
and they pick
fun.
Legally Blonde. So we're
Oh,
doing.
that's
I
gonna be a
go
blast.
Frozen, Frozen, Legally Blonde.
That's good. Well, also that must be a nice, like, palate cleanser at the end
It
of the
is
day,
such
like,
a.
after hearing, like, "Let It Go" so many
Oh my
times,
god.
like,
I couldn't even
you
start with it. I had to like ease myself into it. So we started with In Summer and then we did the party scene. Like we're doing the
yeah.
party scene right now where she shoots her powers and we talk about emotions and reactions and
Yeah.
all of that. And then finally, eventually I'm gonna have to suck it up and I'm gonna have to let it go.
I have a clip actually of you teaching, some Disney, so we're gonna watch that really quick. Just a clip of it.
The main event, looking once before. I'm brushing up, I'm looking down. I'm working on my rhyme! Far rather uninspiring. Ha 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 ha! Oh, I just can't wait to begin. Alright, everybody sing. Are you ready?
Gosh, they're so cute.
No say
They really are.
this. No say be there. No say stop that. No say see here. Circle and run around all day. Good job. Let's free to do it all my way. Ready side for your train.
And then I'll go ahead and pause there because it's a bit of a longer video, but it's so cute, and you can see how excited they are by it. Like, they know the music already, so, like, I think that's a huge part of why they get so excited because, like, they get to run around and jam out to, like, their favorite Disney songs.
Yeah, like 99% of them already knew Lion King, already knew every
Yeah,
word, and so that also helps. Picking Disney shows is what they grow up with, it's what I grow up with, and so,
yeah. It's a way
like,
to,
we're
like, connect with each other in that way too.
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's so fun to also see, like, they need that, like, reminding them out loud of, like, "Okay, this is the next thing, like, you have this many counts to, like, get to your circle," and, like,
Yup,
it's cool to see, like, those gears turning because you can
and
see them being like, "Oh, I have to do this next thing," like
and finding ways to like if something doesn't work out. So in that particular scene, one thing that didn't work out was going from the position to the circle. So I
yeah.
had to find a way for them to understand. So I said, grab a friend. And then that was our way of grab a friend. Oh, boom. And then like they made into spots. It was like a 10-second fix that I'd
Yeah.
spent 2 days trying to figure out.
Yeah,
Of
and
like,
sometimes it's something as simple as, like, "Oh, if I remember, like, if I'm grabbing my friend, this is the thing that happens
this
next,"
is
and, like,
yes.
that
And
kind of, like,
so
choreography brain in a way. And I know that there's like this misconception with theater classes for kids is that like it all just looks like it's games or like it's daycare, but it's not. It's actually theater, and they actually like it does so much more than people think it does. And I'm sure
It
you have
does.
good examples of that
And
too.
we learn besides like with class, we learn our stage directions, we learn different dance moves and different styles of dance. We learn, of course, how to project and stuff. But aside from like the theater business stuff that you learn, we learn how to speak up. We learn how to
Mhm.
engage. We learn collaboration. We do lots of games about like ensemble building and making new friends. And it's such a social game. Like it is such a social class of like if you like you can truly make friends with anybody, and it teaches you just such good friendship building techniques and how to cooperate in a group. And so I like our story building stuff where we write a story together so
Yeah.
everybody feels heard, everybody's listened to. When they get to pick the shows that we do, they feel like they are that much more part of engagement. We do auditions, so like you know, uh, projecting and reading skills. We end up practicing reading skills so much.
Yeah.
And so it's such a good, kids learn way more than you think because when you're in sports, it's really easy to learn those team building stuff. But if you're not a sports person, there's not a lot of other activities to
Mhm.
learn those kind of dynamics. And so without even realizing how well you're doing socially, like how much you're learning, you are. And it all feels
Yeah.
like games.
Yeah, and there's so many skills that they can take with them, even if they don't like do theater in middle school or high school, or if they don't do it as a career, like they're still all skills that like they will use with them, whether they think about it or
Right.
not. Like they've auditioned before, so now they know what it feels like to go into an interview.
Or
Or
just stand
like,
up in front of people, right, and give a
yeah,
presentation. And that is something that, but even like I realized it's a lot the way that I do auditions are have them all against one wall and then they face me in the other direction. So
mhm.
it's not so overwhelming because some kids
Yeah,
can get very overwhelmed if there's just everybody staring at them.
yeah. And I've
And
liked that too. I've had and like have some college auditions in that kind of setup because then everyone behind you is like, okay, like I get to see everyone. Everyone is like doing different things, but also it's great because sometimes you feel that support of the people behind you as well. And like
yeah,
everyone's rooting for you. And especially
and
when you're like a
there's
little kid, that's
there's
helpful.
some logistics to it too. I've had
Keeping everyone in the same room without like
keeping
everyone.
everyone in the same room, but I've had some because kids are sweet, but some kids aren't always like
Yeah.
they're still children, and
Yeah.
I have some kids that laugh and they're not
Right.
laughing with the
Right.
student, they're laughing and I
Yeah.
could not bear the idea of some poor kid reading their monologue looking up and somebody is snickering behind their fold or snicker like I like that'd be devastating for my own confidence.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I can imagine. So it was a logistics thing too. Like, oh, we're gonna turn them around because you're not gonna have to face any of their reactions because
Yeah. And
that can just be so hard.
well, and it's actively getting the students to practice like that empathy because like they're all going to be going up there and auditioning. So it's like
Oh
you don't
yeah.
want to do anything like don't do anything that you wouldn't want someone to do while you're auditioning.
And
Like,
there's lots of like manners that we talk about
yeah.
being quiet when other people do their auditions
Mhm.
and being respectful and all of that. We cover all of that, and theater classes just give a huge confidence boost,
Oh,
which is what I love about
totally.
it too.
Yeah.
And I as much as I Frozen could sound like the hardest class you'll ever do is teach kids Frozen every week. It is such a good show to do because there's so many different roles, and
Mhm.
every kid in my class gets a line in the
Yeah.
class, which is great.
Yeah.
And going from some shows where you only have two or three people, like that Lion King class, everybody's in the song, but I only need like one Zazu, one Nala, and one Simba, and that's it.
Yeah.
Or doing a show, like which one would you pick? The one that only a couple people feel like they're getting what they want, and then where
Or the one where
everybody
everyone
feels.
can do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And then you also stage manage their main stage shows.
I
So
do.
how big are those since they're on the main stage? Like how many kids is that?
We Beauty and the Beast, I think, was 30 kids.
Okay.
It could have been more, but they cap it.
Okay. Okay.
They do cap that, and so we did. I stage managed Beauty and the Beast. I say I stage managed. I stage managed until the day before the show. So literally the last day
Oh
of tech,
no.
I got COVID,
Oh no. That's so upsetting.
and my entire backstage crew got COVID too.
Oh no.
So I lost 4 backstage crew members and the stage manager, because like I woke up and I knew, like
Yeah.
if you ever when you wake up and you just know that
Yeah.
I know I got
You're
it.
like, this is it.
I
Yeah.
got it. I
Yeah.
got the thing.
Oh my gosh. Well,
So
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I woke up with COVID, and I had to, like, from my kitchen table, I had to reorganize it was literally the last day of tech week.
Oh my gosh.
We opened the next day, and I had to reorganize everything. Our director ended up, like, calling the show.
Yeah,
And
because at
so
that
we
point
didn't
you're
get
like,
to
okay,
see it.
you're like, how
Yeah.
can I pass this on to someone
To
else so that
somebody
it can
else, because I'm not
happen?
calling it from my kitchen table. Like, this ain't
No,
happening. So
exactly.
Eh,
But and previous to that though, like before like you had gotten COVID though, I can imagine like stage managing for a kids show is more than just quote unquote stage managing. Like there's lots of
oh,
kids running around.
kid wrangling
Yeah, so
and
I'd say there's a few differences. Like
organization, because like they don't remember where their costumes are, they just threw them
right?
down. And so super labeling, I had color coordinated all of the costumes from like, this color is Lopez, this color is
Mhm.
borrowed from another place because we borrowed from another place for the
Yeah.
Mrs. Potts and the bell dress and stuff, and then your personal. So like everything was color coded, everything had their name on them, everybody had their own baggie, which we are switching to Ben's because those bags ripped immediately. So we are and you learn as you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's a
I
lot more than what you would expect for a typical stage manager,
right,
but
because when you're a college kid, I hope you can keep up with your costume at that point
yeah.
and know where it goes.
Exactly,
But
don't throw your costumes in the wings and call it a day, but little kids don't know any
oh my
better.
god, those that director would kill you. Like
Yeah, exactly. The costumer would kill you.
the costume would kill you if you threw down your Orlando costume just like right
Yeah,
there. So
exactly. And coming up in the spring, so it's October now, so coming up in March, you guys have another main stage production, which you guys finally announced, Shrek the Musical.
we are doing Shrek the
So
Musical.
exciting. I personally adore that show. Will you be directing that production or are you
I
stage managing or
I will be stage managing that show because I'll do 13. I'll be doing 13 different classes in spring and the prep. So I stick to the stage managing, at least for now. And
yeah.
so I'll be stage managing Shrek. And our auditions are in 2 weeks, and
Ooh,
then
that's
they
exciting.
start rehearsal in December.
What ages will
So
that be?
that is usually about 9 or 10 to 18. And
Gotcha.
so they try not to do too young, but still, yeah. So average is about 10 to 18.
Yeah.
And
No.
they
That's a
are
fun group to do Shrek with. Like,
they are I'm so excited. They're
yeah.
doing the Junior Theater Festival right now, and so they're
Okay.
rehearsing for the Junior Theater Festival, and they'll take a 15-minute production. Like, so you take a whole show and you squish it
Mhm.
into 15 minutes. So they're doing Beauty and the Beast, and how do you do Beauty and the Beast in 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and then go and present that in front of a lot of people.
That's
And
cool and that's
so
exciting.
they're
When are
gonna
they
take
doing
that.
that?
That's in January.
Gotcha. So a bunch
So
of things coming up for these
lots of
kiddos.
things.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. What are you most excited for with Shrek?
Um, I gotta besides seeing like the show on Netflix, I've never seen like I've seen a recording of it, but like doing our own version because there's some things that are
Yeah.
like you gotta tailor. So like how do you
Yeah.
do the quick changes and how do you do all of
Mhm.
that when there's a 14-year-old Fiona on stage who maybe hasn't had to do all of that
Yeah, like
real
the quick
quick. So
changing
like
really fast.
and the
Yeah.
costumes and how do you do right, and so it will be unique, and I'm excited.
Like the problem solving aspect is
The
going to be
problem
really
solving, I'm already
interesting.
beginning to think about how are we gonna do these quick changes? How are we gonna problem solve? How are we gonna
Yep.
switch these that fat? Like,
Well,
so
that's the stage manager in you thinking, okay, what are all the things that I have to figure
that
out?
are gonna go wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think you told me it's going to be running May 15th through the 20th at Franklin Art Center in Purcellville, Virginia. So it's a little ways away, but that's okay. Gives people
Yeah.
time to like get their tickets and all that good stuff and crazy things. But yeah, Meg, we've come to finally the end of the episode. It goes by so quickly. Where can people find you? Either like on the internet or at Lopez, those kinds of things.
Lopez Studios is on Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram, and if you scroll back just a little bit, you'll find all of my super cute pictures from summer camps. They are so cute, kids. And then you'll catch us doing all of our new stuff. This Junior Theater Festival and Shrek. They'll post pictures and stuff of that. I'm an old person, so I don't have an Instagram, but I do. You can find the studio on Instagram and find me on Facebook.
Amazing. So you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Lora_Marjoram and my website, www.loramarjoram.com. You can find this show on Instagram at Overtures Show. That's where I post all the updates about new episodes coming out and where you can submit questions and things like that. We're obviously on YouTube. That's where all the live shows happen. So please come join, listen live, come say hi. I take questions live if you have them. So please come join. And I am uploading everything to Spotify and Apple Music later down the line. So this one will probably come out in a month or two on that version of it. So stay tuned there and subscribe, like all the different things for all the different platforms. It really helps and it's supportive. I have confirmation that my next stream will be this Wednesday, October 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Emma Pittman, and I am so stoked, and I know she's really excited. So I am so glad to finally make this happen. But yes, Meg, do you have any final thoughts for viewers live and in the future?
If you ever think that you can't do something, you're wrong. You can do it. So if I was super hesitant about being a teacher, and I absolutely love it. So no job is too small, and no job is not worthy of your time, because you don't know how many lives you can really change and how many people you really do affect with what theater can do for them.
Yeah, totally. I love that so much. That's so accurate and so truthful and filled with literal life experience coming from you. So I appreciate that so much. But with that, we're at the end of our episode. So thank you all so much for listening and hope you have a great day. We'll see you later. Bye.